for LeBron, AD, and the Lakers?
I think so. I mean, the intent is to make a run at multiple championships. Of course, they still have to re-sign Anthony Davis with free agency coming up for him. But I think that was always the thing with LeBron. He went there to win multiple championships. For one, you don't go to Los Angeles just to play a season and finish. You better get some hardware and bring it back home. There's always pressure with that, but that's what they've established over their great tenure as an organization. And Magic's right. I mean, they're always going to have, if you have two of the top 5 players or top 2 players in the league, you're always going to have a chance. So, I mean, led by, Rob Pelinka in the boardroom, I mean, they're always going to be aggressive. They're always going to be making moves, and they're there to win. So we see how good they can be. They're going to have to get better in order to repeat. So we'll pay attention to what they do in the offseason.
Yeah, and look, but listen, we all know what LeBron James is going to do. We all witnessed what he's done over the last 17 years as far as being the greatest player to ever walk the planet Earth. But now you have Anthony Davis, who is battle-tested, who just dominated the postseason. I mean, everybody in front of him was Harris Fried Chicken. And I say Harris Fried Chicken because he's from the Chi-Town. I know he loved that place. But everybody they put in front of Anthony Davis, he demoralized them. And now he's battle-tested. And going into next season with the confidence that you're going to give this guy who's already a generational talent, who's already one of one, it's going to be a problem for the entire NBA, in my opinion. And when I'm looking at Anthony Davis, not only do I believe that the Lakers are going to win a championship again next year and repeat, but I strongly believe that Anthony Davis is going to win the MVP next year.
Well, it's not an outrageous thing to say on that one, Perk. I haven't seen a Laker guarantee a repeat so fast since Pat Riley back in the 80s. So I was pretty impressed with Magic going there. I will say this, that I always felt that the Lakers would be better in year 2 than in year 1. I mean, this was certainly the case with Chris Bosh when they were there with the Heat. They got better in year 2. In Cleveland, he won the championship in year 2. And I sort of look at this as like year 2 because the first year was sort of a false start with LeBron's injury. So give them another transaction cycle to add another role player or 2. Guys are going to want to play there. I think their team will be better. But I do have to point this out. The Golden State Warriors, in theory, will be back. The Brooklyn Nets will get Durant and Kyrie Irving. In theory, I have no idea what next season is going to look like, but in theory, the field should get a little bit more competitive.
Chris, let me ask you this. What kind of players do you think that they should add? Like, what type of players should they add? Should they add more shooting? Should they add more defense? What do you think they should add?
Well, I mean, they're always going to have a defensive first mentality with Vogel as the head coach and, of course, the great coaching staff that they have. I think shooting is always going to be an important thing for them. That was one of their perceived weaknesses from this past season and postseason. You can always get better at shooting, but really just picking those pieces that really complement AD and Bron. Of course, with Dwight Howard and JaVale McGee coming up, it makes it a little difficult with the center position, but I'm sure they'll be able to figure some things out with more size and more shooting and more defense and really just continuing to surround AD and LeBron. I mean, hey, look, at the end of the day, they're great players, so it's a great problem to have, and you'll be able to probably get somebody, and they'll tremendously get better as soon as they show up to camp.
Speaking of great players and great people, Chris Bosh, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, guys.
All right, take care, Chris. All right, coming up next. There we go. The kids got in there. There we go. We love it.
Appreciate it, guys.
Take care. All right, coming up next.
He does have some choices. As you heard Woj say in our last block, he's not expected to commit in the immediate days. Brian, can you explain a little bit about what's going on here to our audience, what his options are, and is there any point they should start getting nervous?
Well, there's some speculation out there, Rachel, that one of the reasons why he's going to delay his decision is because the Lakers have some other free agency moves to make, and he just wants to let them know he's watching. Now, I don't think there's any stress out there. He will be a Laker, but one of the guys they have to make a decision on, and it's a tough decision about how much to pay him, is Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who is represented by the same agent, Rich Paul. Now, I think Caldwell Pope is going to have some interest out there in the market. Whether or not he can get enough money out there to actually leave the Lakers is a different story. But this is somewhat reminiscent of when J.R. Smith was a free agent back in 2016 Cleveland, represented by Rich Paul, and LeBron took his sweet time over that summer before signing. Now, having said that, LeBron did sign before J.R. Smith did. But while I think Anthony Davis has been well aware of his contracts options for months now, maybe it's just a little bit of a check game that he's playing.
Paul, if you're Anthony Davis, would you commit 2 years plus a player option, do the 1-and-1, where you're only committing for another year? We've seen that be a strain on teams, like when Kevin Durant kept doing the 1-and-1s and the 1-and-1s that just brought all these questions about whether he was really going to stay. Or do you want to keep your flexibility if you're Anthony Davis?
I think it's important for the players these days keep their flexibility. I line my contract up directly with LeBron's because, as you can see, he can sign 35% of the cap after the 10 years. And so, LeBron, he could probably retire in 2-3 years. Who knows? I'll line my situation up with his. But what Anthony Davis got to understand is you're a Laker, you won a championship. Now, if you decide after 2 years you don't want to be a Laker or 3 years you don't want to be a Laker, it's like, to me, where do you go from there? And so I really would start thinking long term. I would think even for a 5 or 6 year deal. I mean, because after you may win another championship as a Laker, there's nowhere else you can go after being a Laker after winning 2 championships and being the face of the franchise long after LeBron has left. So, I mean, his options are open, and that's a good thing to have these type of options for Anthony Davis to take these type of decisions, because he's one of those players whose game is injury-proof also. He's 7 feet athletic. He can do so many things with the ball. He can shoot, soft touch, handle the ball. So sky's the limit for this kid. Whether he stays healthy or not, he's still going to get a great deal. So maybe 2 is the way to go.
I like what you're saying, Paul. I agree. He really has some flexibility. I think lining his contract up with LeBron is a great thing to do. Win as much as possible. And then down the line, obviously, you could do the 1-and-1s back at home. I know that was talked about. I think Chicago, a couple other teams where he could possibly go back. He could do his 1-and-1s then. But right now, you want to win as much as possible. And he can make a lot of money on a very good team with the chance to win another championship, back-to-back possibly. So I think right now, I don't walk away from that opportunity. I mean, I think, at the end of the day, he's going to be a Laker. And they're just giving all these, just doing, playing the game a little bit. Yeah, I know I'm signing there. I'll sign later, just for the drama,
What's life without a little bit of drama? And by the way, Paul, I know that you have your number retired in Boston. Right, exactly. I know, Paul, you have your number retired in Boston Garden, but you're clearly always an LA kid if you're saying, what could you possibly want besides playing for the Lakers? That there's not even a consideration of another team. That's the most LA thing I think I've heard you say in a while. I do want to move on to the Sixers,
after basketball anyway.
Yes, for sure. Here's President of Basketball Operations Rob Pelinka just got his own deal done for Dennis Schroeder, and he spoke about that trade and more in his media availability yesterday. Here is what he said about the Schroeder deal. Quote, he has been a player we pursued not just in this trade deadline, but before. We pursued him aggressively. I think it's easy to fall into complacency when you win a title and just say, hey, let's run it back. But at the same time, I think my school of thinking is always, let's find ways we can become even better. Every offseason, let's get better. And Ramona, this is such an important idea because, yes, you are, quote, running it back. But even with your roster, everyone gets a year older. So that idea of just run it back, never exactly right. LeBron James is turning 36 next month. What kind of turnover can we expect on this roster entering next season?
Well, look, the Lakers have the problem of championship, which is you have to now pay the championship premium. Everybody wants their pound, right? They want their bag of cash. I feel bad for the Lakers in some sense that they didn't get that playoff money. They didn't get that gate money of all the fans attending Staples Center. So usually all the luxury tax you have to pay back to your players when they want to get paid for all their contributions. you don't feel bad about it. Now, don't feel too bad for them. They still make a lot of money on their cable TV deal. But they've got to pony up a lot of money to keep Contavious Caldwell-Pope. Okay, they're going to have to pay. They're going to have to pay Avery Bradley, who opted out of his last year. I'm told he wants to stay in LA. He has other offers, but if they offer him a 2-year deal, he would be inclined to stay. Like, in other words, the Lakers have first dibs on him. But a lot of other teams, Golden State, Milwaukee, Charlotte, have interest in him. Dwight Howard is another guy they need to bring back. JaVale McGee opted into his contract. That's $4 million. So if they can keep him there, that's good for them. Or they can use him in trade. But essentially for the Lakers, Rachel, they have to keep all their guys, pay a lot more money for the same guys they got at a discount last year, and then they have to go and try to find new pieces that make them better. So they did that with Schroeder, and I think they have. They'd like to upgrade again at center, either by bringing back Dwight Howard and JaVale, or some of the other centers on the market. Marc Gasol's name I've heard, Ibaka, obviously. And they need to replace Danny Green. A lot of defense and shooting you just lost.
Well, we all know the cost of winning costs money. I mean,
Right.
I remember a key player for us, James Posey. We won the championship, and the next year he won more money, and we didn't keep him. And I really think that really cost us in the long run, not paying the extra dollars to keep the team together like that. And that's what you're going to see with the Lakers. Although I do think they did upgrade by getting Schroeder. Doesn't have the championship experience of Rajon Rondo, but he is a guy who's a key component to OKC this year, going as far as they went and pushing Houston on the brink of elimination. You know, he's a guy who can score the ball a little bit better. He's another ball handler and decision maker that can take pressure off LeBron, and so that's a key pickup for them in trade for Dennis Schroeder. So, and we'll have to see how these other pieces fall in place for the Lakers, but that's a great start right there.
Yeah, I agree. Obviously, AD is number one to handle that, which we know that they will. Yeah. Bringing in Schroeder, I think, speed, quickness. You bring in a younger guy who has some playoff experience. Like you said, he does not have Rondo's experience, but at the same time, he's a guy that you can implement into your offense. You can put the ball in his hand, and he can get a bucket. He can make plays. He has a huge impact on the defensive end as well. So, like I said, it's a great start. And then bringing in Dwight Howard or finding a center like that, I like a Marc Gasol in there as well. I mean, somebody you can play through and to move the ball and make plays and defensively, or a Ibaka. So I think a great start with Schroeder.
Yeah, Rachel, Rob Pelinka's got a tough job. I know he says the enemy of winning is complacency, but it's more than that. It's not just complacency, because they don't even have that luxury. When you look at Dwight Howard, Avery Bradley opted out, KCP opted out, Rondo, and there's a fifth one. Danny Green is gone, and Markieff Morris. So you've got all these guys who were key contributors for a championship campaign, whether they did it early in the playoffs, late in the playoffs, in the regular season. These guys were all key contributors to this Lakers team. They all could be gone, right? You talk about Dwight Howard was here on a non-guaranteed minimum. He did his job. Now it's time for him to go back and cash out again. So the reality is, even if they wanted to be complacent, they can't. But I like some of the deals that Vince and Paul and Ramona are talking about. I love the idea of Ibaka there, or Gasol. Bogdanovic, if they can get him, that's a huge upgrade in terms of someone who's another ball creator, ball handler, and play creator. And that's the other thing about Schroeder, going back to that point. What the Lakers were missing or were looking for at some point in the season was that kind of guy. That's why J.R. Smith was a Laker. That's why Deion Waiters was a Laker, right? Ultimately, it turned out they didn't really need it. They had enough to win a championship. But they knew that was an area of concern that they needed to upgrade in. And Schroeder gives them that. Gives them someone who doesn't need LeBron to create his offense for him. And I think that's going to help him.
Look, I mean, you're talking about two-time NBA champion J.R. Smith there. When you talk about him. Come on. Look, I love the Schroeder pickup. He's feisty. He's been more comfortable with his role this last year, and I'm very interested to see what he's going to do for the Lakers. We'll see what else happens in L.A. Never boring, and never boring in New York either.